This is a coordinated effort. I want to make that clear. It has nothing to do with the original source at this point. I think most people recognize that. It's the great destroyer. It's the great deconstructor of society in America. In the case of the Great Panic of 2020, we had a virus that broke out in China. Before it even hit the continent of North America or Europe, computer modelers were already working overtime to suggest that millions of people were going to die and that the only way to stop it was to do what they said to do. We're under a full press attack from all sides. It's an ingenious attack in a way because it's very effective and it's working. We can't do much about it now individually, but there's going to come a time. We have a new type of enemy. It's not an enemy with battle tanks. It's not an enemy necessarily with airplanes and missiles and ICBMs, but it's an enemy with an algorithm. It's an enemy who believes that only science can determine what is really true in the world. All other views are excluded. This new enemy is coming after us with scientific tools, using science as a weapon, to cause us to do what they want them, what they say they want us to do. I always challenge people, by the way, to bring to me evidence that this stuff is not true. I'd love to have people that are authoritative in their field come and say, you know, you're wrong here and you're wrong there, or you misquoted this or something. But in all the time I've been speaking and writing about technocracy, nobody really has come forward to offer any counter-criticism. That tells me that what I've written stands, that it's true, that it's accurate, and that my assessment is correct as well. I believe very firmly, based on my entire study of technocracy and economic issues dating back to the early 1970s, that technocracy is engaged right this minute in a coup d'etat that will attempt to conquer the entire planet for the sake of establishing a technocracy. I don't think there's any doubt about it anymore. Anybody who has the power to shut down the global economic system in the first place has something going for them, you have to admit. Not everybody could do that. President Trump couldn't do that if he wanted to. In fact, there's no group of leaders in the world that could, political leaders at least, that could cause such a thing to happen. But the technocrats did. In order to make my point here again, I'll go back to one of the original architects of technocracy, Thorstein Veblen, way back in roughly 1922, 1925. He said that technocracy, that's the era that we're in now, would naturally supersede the Marxist, socialist, communist paradigm. He viewed those as necessary stepping stones to get to the end goal, which was technocracy. Zbigniew Brzezinski came along in 1970 while he was a professor at Columbia University and said exactly the same thing in his book, Between Two Ages, America's Role in the Technotronic Era. He concluded that Marxism was a necessary stepping stone to his technotronic era, which is technocracy. They fed this subsequently to the United Nations, by the way, and it became sustainable development or green economy or Green New Deal. There's a number of terms now that describe it. But the whole concept of technocracy was then fed to the United Nations, which took it to the world. And now the world is thoroughly engulfed in this sustainable development mantra. But it requires the death of capitalism and free enterprise to implement. So who's outgunning for capitalism and free enterprise? Well, it's the technocrats. They're the ones that have pulled the strings to get us this far. They're the ones that are standing behind with financing, with moral support, with resources to fan the flames of the civil unrest that we have in our nation today. This is not a Marxist takeover of our nation, my friends. Don't even go there. Don't even think it, because that is not the case. The Marxists have become the useful idiots of the technocrats. They don't have a clue that they're going to be the first ones that get thrown under the bus when technocracy gains complete control of the global system. They don't see this. They don't see the hand above them manipulating them. They don't see who's executing and creating the policies to be executed all around the world. They're blind to it. But they're the ones that are going to be the first destroyed if technocracy wins completely and takes over. And if these elements are successful, at this point, who knows? They could be, maybe not. But if they're successful, when the ashes and the cars and everything else are still smoldering, out of those disasters, technocrats will rise. People will beg even for technocrats to come in and restore order to society. We've seen this happen in many countries around the world in the last 20 years. These technocrats will gladly at that point come in and say, well, it took you long enough to ask us, didn't it? So you see where this is headed? Technocracy right now has a vice grip on the entire planet. And yet, everybody still seems to think, oh, it's a communist takeover. Oh, it's going to be communism, baby. It's going to be socialism. It's going to be this, that, or the other. Oh, I'm sorry. It's not. It's going to be technocracy. If today's technocrats are meticulously working toward a scientific dictatorship and applying a specific strategy to get there, wouldn't you think that they have a specific list of criteria that must be met before game over can be called? Wouldn't you think that they are comparing such a list to actual progress they are making in the world? Wouldn't you think that they are monitoring their progress and will recognize when the list has been fulfilled? If you can see my point here, then there are only two questions left, and here is the punchline of this particular point. When that day comes, will the technocrats have the guts to shut down the old world order and simply declare the system as dictator? And if so, how long will it take them to act?
If you liked the video, a sub to the channel would be incredible, and also share the video to spread the word. You can watch another video, just click left or right. Keep inspiring.